I almost missed it the first time I pulled the document. Truist Bank Correspondent Seller Guide, Section 2.24, dated August 2025. Just a standard rural development loan policy, page 5. And there, listed by name as an ineligible property type, right between geodesic domes and earth homes, was a structure with documented survival of a Category 5 hurricane. The federal mortgage system will not touch it. I'm Chris Allen. I've been quietly documenting alternative housing for years now. Owner interviews, archived measurements, county code records, university field studies, and what pulled me back to this one was a file I'd had sitting in my notes since October of 2018. A man named Sammy Hamilton, Florida Panhandle. His 30 by 40 steel arch building rode out Hurricane Michael at landfall, 160 mile-an-hour sustained winds. The neighborhoods around him got flattened. His structure didn't have a wrinkle in the panels. 12 years old at the time. The shell of one of these cost under $10,000. The design has been around since 1941, and the real reason you never seen one in a suburb, that part doesn't add up. If you want to see the housing methods the industry quietly stopped talking about, subscribe to the channel. Let me back up and explain what we're actually talking about, because the term itself, Quonset hut, carries a lot of baggage. Most people hear it and they picture a rusted-out farm shed in Kansas, some half-collapsed thing on the back 40. That's not what I'm describing. The technical name is a steel arch ribbed structure. The first one came off the assembly line in 1941 at Quonset Point, Rhode Island, the Navy Construction Battalion Center. The Navy needed a building that could be shipped to anywhere on Earth and assembled by men who had never built anything in their lives. They contracted the George A. Fuller Company out of Chicago. An engineer named Peter DeJong and a staff architect named Otto Brandenberger had 2 months to deliver a working design. They beat it. First hut shipped 60 days from contract. The design itself is almost embarrassingly simple. Curved, corrugated steel panels, bolted together at the seams, and the whole thing forms one continuous arch from foundation to foundation. There's no roof. There's no wall. The wall is the roof. And that detail, that one structural detail, is the entire story.
Here's something I didn't fully appreciate until I was reading through the FEMA storm shelter testing data a couple of years ago. Almost every conventional house that fails in a hurricane fails in the same place, the joint where the wall meets the roof. Wind gets under the eave, lifts the rafters, the envelope comes off. That's the failure mode in stick-built construction. Always has been. The Washington Post ran an analysis right after Hurricane Michael in 2018. The homes that survived had been retrofitted with hurricane straps and extra nailing at that exact connection, the joint. A Quonset hut doesn't have that joint. There's nothing to fail. Wind hits the curve, gets redirected up and over, and the load is distributed evenly down both sides of the arch into the foundation. Now, I want to give you the actual numbers because I get tired of vague claims. Steelmaster's High-Velocity Hurricane Zone certification, the HVHZ standard, requires the panel to take a 15-pound 2x4 launched at 100 miles an hour. Horizontal impact. That's the FEMA P361 protocol, also referenced in ICC 500. The panel they tested was 0.06 inches thick. It barely deformed. The Q-Cabin kit out of Chico, California, designed by a Kansas-trained architect named Vern Sneed, those are rated to 200 mile-an-hour winds as standard. He retrofitted one specifically for Donner Pass, the worst snow loads in the lower 48, and they engineered it to 354 pounds per square foot. For comparison, your typical residential roof up in Colorado is rated for about 40. The cost numbers are where it gets uncomfortable. I pulled the 2026 pricing data from Buildings Guide and cross-referenced against 3 manufacturers. Curveco's published kit price runs $8 to $14 a square foot for the steel itself. A 30 by 40 shell, that's 1,200 square feet, somewhere between $7,000 and $15,000 for the bare kit. And I want to be honest about something here. That's not a finished home. That's the arch. You still need a slab, end walls, doors, insulation, electrical, plumbing. By the time you're done, a 30 by 40 Quonset home runs you $25,000 to $45,000 total. Maybe $60,000 if you go nice. Compare that to median new construction on a comparable stick-built home, you're at $180,000 to $250,000. The math is brutal.
And these have been built. Real builds, real owners. Bill and Lynn Hackinson in Northwest Pennsylvania. Mother Earth News profiled them in their April 2009 issue. 40 by 40 Steelmaster S model, 22-gauge galvalume, floating slab on a foot of gravel. Total project under $35,000. They're still in it. Sammy Hamilton, the gentleman from The Hook, his building was 12 years old when Michael hit in October of 2018, still standing. The neighbors weren't. Then there's Roger Young Village, and this is where it gets strange. Right after the war, Los Angeles had thousands of veterans coming home and nowhere to put them, so the city built a Quonset hut neighborhood inside Griffith Park. 750 units, 13,000 applications submitted for 1,500 slots. Each unit cost the city $1,800 delivered from the Port Hueneme Navy base in Ventura. Within 2 years, over 5,000 people were living there. 2-bedroom layouts, kitchens, full bathrooms, all on concrete slabs. The site is the LA Zoo today. Most people walking through that zoo have no idea they're on top of what was once one of the most diverse residential communities in Southern California. Which raises the question I keep coming back to. If this design works, if the engineering is documented, if the cost is a fraction of conventional construction, then why is it gone? The first time I asked that question, I assumed the answer was going to be boring. Stigma. Veterans came home from the war, didn't want to live in something that looked like the barracks they just left, and the design quietly faded out of the residential market. That's the clean version. The story I told myself the first couple of years I was researching this. It's not what the records show. Come back to that Truist document, because once you see the language for what it is, you can't unsee it. Section 2.24 of their correspondent seller guide, Rural Development Loan Standard. That's the policy governing USDA-backed mortgages, the federal program designed specifically to help low and moderate income families buy homes in rural areas. 0 down payment in some cases, income limits up to $158,000 for an 8-person household. The whole point of the program is access to housing.
And on page 5, under ineligible property types, the list reads manufactured housing, geodesic domes, earth homes, Quonset huts, by name. The federal mortgage system, the program that exists to put rural families into homes, has the cheapest disaster-resistant home design in America on a written exclusion list. I want to be careful here because I don't want to overstate it. You can still buy one, you can still build one. People do it every year. But you cannot use the standard federal rural housing loan. And you cannot use most conventional 30-year mortgages either. I pulled the underwriting language from a lender out of California, almost identical wording across the industry. Pole barn homes, container homes, geodesic domes, Quonset huts, all the same category, unique homes, non-standard. Lenders demand 30 to 40% down, outstanding credit, significant cash reserves. Most regular families can't qualify. The reason comes back to a piece in the Journal of Real Estate Finance and Economics, Housing Price Dispersion. Properties that are difficult to appraise are less liquid. If a bank has to foreclose, they can't easily resell because the buyer pool is small, so the bank refuses to write the loan. That's the mechanism. It's not malicious, it's self-perpetuating. But it gets older than that. The first formal residential ban I could trace was in Honolulu, 1950, May 24th. The Star Bulletin printed the headline, Quonset Menace Crackdown Bills Voted by Board, page 12. I had to go through the University of Hawaii Hamilton Library microfiche records to confirm the exact date, but the document is clear. 500 residents had signed a petition against a Quonset being moved onto a Bingham Street lot. Manoa residents were protesting Jackson College moving 6 huts onto a campus on Manoa Road. The committee's stated rationale, this is in the official minutes, was that surplus Army buildings are, in their words, not things of beauty. The ordinance passed. After 1950, you could not legally build a Quonset in a residential zone. That language about beauty, that's the entire game. Because the building itself, structurally, was safer than 90% of what was already on the island.
Same pattern shows up in Santa Cruz County, Arizona, page 103 of their zoning code. The exact phrase is metal prefabricated buildings, Quonset huts, and Butler-type buildings are prohibited for residential purposes. Rothbury, Michigan, Village Code Section 152.09, originally passed in 1968, makes it unlawful to use a Quonset hut as a dwelling. Period. Now, who benefits? This is where I have to be careful because I don't want to wave my hands and yell conspiracy when the actual answer is more boring and more profitable. There's no smoking gun. What there is the National House Builders Association, the NAHB. They run something called the Construction Codes and Standards Committee, and they openly state on their own website that they participate in the international codes process. They have what they call proposal oversight working groups that, in their own words, review and establish positions on every proposed change to the international codes, the same codes your county adopts. Then you've got the Brick Industry Association openly opposing Minnesota's 2021 Legalize Affordable Housing Act on the grounds that it would lower property values. The Vinyl Siding Institute lobbying its own corner. Emily Hamilton, Senior Research Fellow at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University, she's published on this for years. Her conclusion is that aesthetic mandates have no purpose other than excluding households priced out by more expensive material requirements. That's her language. The Housing Affordability Institute pulled the numbers. 4-sided aesthetic mandates with partial stone facade, $20,000 per unit. Front porch mandates, $3,500. Architectural elements like wider window trim, $2,500. Multiply across an entire subdivision, and you start to understand who actually wins when a Quonset hut can't legally exist next to a beige stucco rancher. Bowling Green, Kentucky, December 2002. The Bowling Green Daily News covered it. The municipal utility had bought a property for $775,000. The historic Quonset huts had hosted Chuck Berry, B.B. King, Mahalia Jackson, Ike and Tina Turner. They were on Kentucky's top 10 endangered historical buildings. The utility demolished them anyway for water plant expansion. The man who'd been planning to approach the board about relocating them found out by driving past and seeing the equipment already at work.
That one stuck with me. That's not a financial calculation, that's a posture. The building was inconvenient. But here's where the story turns. Because the codes are real, the mortgage exclusion is real, but the actual option itself, the actual path to building one of these, is still wide open. You just have to know where to look, and what to verify, and in what order. Geography matters more than people realize. The first time someone called me asking about Quonset build, they were in a planned subdivision outside Atlanta. HOA enforced, Architectural Review Board. They were never going to be allowed to do this, and I had to tell them so. That's not the right starting point. Where you can build today with the fewest barriers are rural unincorporated counties. Andrew County, Missouri is the canonical example. Their county website states it directly. No county zoning ordinances, no county building authority outside city limits. There are dozens of counties like that across Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, parts of Alaska. Agricultural zoning in most states is also significantly more permissive than residential. That's where most modern Quonset homes are actually getting built. The people building them. Vern Sneed, the architect I mentioned earlier, his firm, Design Horizons, out of Chico, California, has been turning out Q-cabin kits for over a decade. After the Paradise Fire in 2018 that killed 85 people, he pivoted his entire marketing posture towards fire survivors. His Mountaineer model, 20 by 50, 1,400 square feet, 2-bedroom, 2-bath with a loft, currently sits at about $140 a square foot for the kit, permit-ready with engineering. Marie Saldivar runs a woman-owned company called Steel Hut out of Oregon, partnered with Skylab Architecture in Portland, finished her first residential prototype in Sisters, Oregon, late 2024. Fine Home Building profiled her in their March 2026 issue. Her smallest model, the Jack Rabbit Loft, plans and kit available under $30,000. Then there's an architect named Earl Parson, runs a firm called Clever Moderns, focused entirely on Quonset home design. He sells project documents and runs a private Facebook group called DIY Quonset Dwellers. Over 6,000 members trading drawings, build photos, and county-by-county zoning experience. The realistic cost path for a small Quonset home today. Bare kit,
$7,000 to $15,000 for a 30 by 40. Concrete slab, $4 to $8 a square foot, another $5,000 to $10,000. End walls and doors, basic openings, $3,000 to $8,000. Closed cell spray foam, and this is the part most people underestimate, can run $6,000 to $10,000 on a small home. Plus electrical, plumbing, interior framing, and finishes. Total for a livable 30 by 40, somewhere between $35,000 and $65,000. DIY a significant portion of the labor, you can come in lower. Skill level. Honest answer. The shell can be erected by a small team with a scissor lift and a socket wrench. Steelmaster's published documentation says 10 people, basic tools, 1 day for a smaller hut. Larger residential huts, 3-man crew, 3 to 14 days. No welding required. The interior, that's where DIY people slow down, because plumbing and electrical typically require permitted, licensed work in most jurisdictions. Plan for it. Resources, the actual ones I'd point any serious builder toward, are linked in the description below. Decker and Cheese book, Quonset Hut, Metal Living for a Modern Age, Princeton Architectural Press, 2005, The Foundational Architectural History. The Mother Earth News Hackinson article from April 2009 with one of the cleanest cost breakdowns I've ever seen anywhere. Manufacturer kit links, the architect stamped plan providers I trust, financing options that work for non-standard housing. HFS Financial does personal loans on these. USDA does ag loans on 5+ acre tracts. Portfolio lenders are your best mortgage path because they hold the loans in-house instead of trying to sell them to Fannie Mae. All of it's down there. Before you spend $1, though, the checklist. This is the part I can't emphasize enough because I've watched people lose deposits by skipping these. 1. Pull the zoning code for your specific parcel before you buy the land. Not a phone call, the actual PDF. Search the document for the words Quonset, metal, prefabricated, manufactured. If any of those words appear attached to restrictions, you have a problem. 2. If there's an HOA, get the CC&Rs in writing. Read every page. Restrictions on exterior material, roof pitch, and architectural style will quietly disqualify a Quonset without ever using the word.
3. Get engineer-stamped drawings for your specific wind and snow zone before you finalize the kit. Generic plans get rejected. Site-specific engineering is what passes permits. 4. Pre-quote insurance and financing before you break ground. Some carriers won't write the policy. Some lenders won't write the loan. Find out before you have a slab in the ground, not after. 5. Talk to at least one owner who's already built one in your climate. They'll tell you what the manufacturer won't. That's the whole map. The structure works. The history is documented. The barriers are political and financial, not structural. And the people quietly building these in the counties that still let them are doing it for $40,000, while their neighbors are 8 years into a $300,000 mortgage on a house that won't survive the next storm. The choice has been there the whole time. They just didn't want you to see it.